Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Less is more. Liverpool, they fly out for the Club World Cup today. Jurgen Klopp, though, claims he's not been consulted about the prospect of playing even more games as part of Champions League reforms. It's Plan United. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he claims he's close to coming up with a winning formula as he comes up to a year in charge at Old Trafford. And Pep, he gets his claws out. Why is the Manchester City coach denying stories that he can walk away from the Etihad in the summer? Signed, sealed and delivered with us this morning. Matt Dickinson is the chief sports writer at The Times. Melissa Reddy is senior football correspondent at The Independent. And Jeremy Cross is the chief sports writer at The Daily Star. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Good to see you. Good to see you, Matt, as well, because I know you've been running, well, pretty much around the world, haven't you? Was it 130 kilometres ultra marathon, super ultra marathon? Across the desert a couple of weeks ago?
Well, I thought it was a desert, and then it turned out to be mountains, which was one of the many shocks of the whole thing. Yeah, midlife crisis. Cheaper than buying a Porsche.
Cheaper than buying a Porsche, but what cost did you? Could you enjoy that? Did you enjoy it? Could you enjoy it?
Well, yeah. 3 a.m. under the stars. Yeah. It's. I recommend it. Yeah. I think Jeremy's
romantic.
Jeremy's
I was going to say, have you got anything in the pipeline?
I'm still working on my plan. Yeah.
You were working on it with Charlie Sale last night, by all accounts. Is he really? He's apparently in his retirement, his dotage.
He's taken up croquet, and he's extremely into croquet, which is a bit disturbing.
Is he really the world's number 270?
721 in the world. Yeah.
Fair play, Charlie Sale. That's what you do.
He couldn't beat Dicko.
That's what you do in retirement. Tweet us your tales of sporting prowess at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's get into the papers. That's what we're here for. Back page of the Mail on Sunday then. Klopp's rage. They won yesterday, beat Watford at Anfield. But at what price in the future? You like watching us suffer, but more games is madness. He's referring to potential Champions League reforms. It's a few years away, but he'll probably still be Liverpool manager. He signed a new contract in the week. Sunday Express, we've seen this headline before. Liverpool, they're 17 points clear of Manchester City. City, of course, play Arsenal later today. 25 clear of Manchester United. They think it's all over. United, though, they're going to do something about it because they're going to sign Erling Haaland, according to Steve Bates on the back of The People this morning. The problem with one newspaper group owning several papers is that story is so good, it's on the back of the Sunday Mirror. Same byline, Steve Bates this morning, back of the Star as well, Jeremy's paper. Steve Bates again, he's going to ditch his flops. We're going to bring in Haaland in the transfer window. Back of the Sun this morning, Ollie's Lolly. He's going to spend big, but this story is interesting as well. Ken Lawrence here, he says that Brendan Rodgers tops Manchester City's wish list if Pep Guardiola walks away. Of course, Brendan has just signed a new contract, an extended contract with Leicester City. And if Guardiola is going to stay, then Sam Wallace in his piece this morning says that he's got to take his lead from Sir Alex Ferguson. Big names went in the past, the likes of Paul Ince, Steve Bruce, of course, some big names, David Beckham to Real Madrid. Guardiola may need a similar purge at Manchester City. We're going to get on to all things City. Liverpool, of course, racing away with it at the top of the league. But before we do get going, Matt, I would just like to talk about Jim Smith, because he is, of course, a football favourite, an old football favourite. One of the real characters in the game, passed away on Tuesday at the age of 79. Of course, he's someone that we came across in his managerial capacity with various clubs: Oxford, QPR, Newcastle, and Portsmouth. We know that he'd been unwell for a period of time. But of course, he will be sorely missed, particularly by the clubs and the people and the personalities that he came into contact with.
Exactly. I mean, I think that the thing that's come through from all the tributes, and as you say, we sort of saw latterly in his career, is this phrase, football man. You know, he was, I mean, for a managerial career to span more than 3 decades, I think it's something like 1,500 games. I mean, that longevity in itself, we think of the modern world where managers seem to sort of fly in and out of a revolving door in no time, but he had an absolute devotion to the game. I think that above all, dedication to it. I think there's so many ex-players talking about, you know, he understood the game, but above all, he was a sort of father figure, just this larger-than-life character. I remember some press conferences, just the charisma of the guy really just stood out. And I think it was, when I was thinking about him, I sort of also thought of someone like Bobby Robson, just with that infectious enthusiasm and love for the game. And I think that's, in itself, that's a heck of a sort of legacy and a tribute to leave.
Yeah, it certainly is, Matt. Nice words. And Harry Redknapp, of course, earlier in the week, who worked with him, Portsmouth, of course, that famous chant at Fratton Park, Harry and Jim, top of the league. Harry Redknapp said that Jim Smith was the best signing he ever made. Jim Smith, who sadly passed away on Tuesday at the age of 79. OK, let's talk all things Liverpool, Melissa. Where do we start? Back page of the Mail on Sunday is all about the potential for Champions League reform. Now, we know, of course, Liverpool have got a pretty heavy fixture schedule because they play Tuesday Carabao Cup, Wednesday they play Monterrey in the Club World Cup. But this is something slightly different in that Klopp's talking about the idea of adding 4 more games to Champions League group games from the 24-25 season. Has he got a point? He's saying too many games here. He wants more recovery time, more rest, and you'll get a better product? Or do we want more of the same? Or is it just so intoxicating we want more football?
I think he's completely right, and you won't find many elite managers or players or anyone at the top end of the game arguing with that because, and you know, we've listened to former players who are on TV at the moment discussing how difficult it is to get your body to perform every 3 days, and actually what a mental toll that takes because you want your body to perform in a certain way. It's not doing it, and then you beat yourself up about it mentally because you're not performing to your standards and your capabilities. And adding extra games is just going to absolutely kill the players. It's hard enough to cover it when you're not kicking a ball and you feel like, look at the way I sound, like covering games and all the travel, everything just goes on top of each other, and you feel like it's this relentless cycle that's not bringing the best out of you because you're only just doing what you can and not what you want to, not operating to any sort of great efficiency. And yeah, I actually genuinely feel sorry for the players because they always get told they earn all this money and they should be able to just deal with whatever comes at them, but they are only human and they will feel the effects of it.
My worry, Jeremy, about it as well is that we'll start to see, OK, if that's going to be the case, if you need the elite players at the top of the Premier League to get the job done, as Liverpool, of course, the top teams, and also in the Champions League because of the demands and the financial incentives and, of course, the allure of the competition itself, is that managers will say, OK, we'll play the B team. We will play a designated B team in the Carabao Cup. We will play a designated B team in the FA Cup because our players cannot, as the point that Melissa made, the physical toll, mental demands, they just won't be able, they can't handle it.
Well, that's what
Let's be
that will
realistic.
happen at Villa this week, won't it? Because Liverpool obviously got 2 games the same week. So you will see a second team playing in the quarter-final of one of our major cup competitions, which is a warning shot across the bows of those who run the game, because that is a clear indication that the demands on players are too great. I mean, when you look at, I don't know about you guys, but when I've covered lots of group games in the Champions League, and they are pretty mediocre, a lot of them, aren't they? And the competition only comes alive when you get to the sort of the quarter-final stage, really. And last season was a classic example. We had some great knockout games, and Liverpool went on to win. But and then there's a major tournament next summer as well. It's the Euros. That's another summer of high-demand football on our top players. I mean, people are calling for Vardy to be back in the England squad, but when you look at why he's playing so well, it's probably because every time there's an international break, he's not playing for England. He's getting a rest. James Milner's the same at Liverpool. He's just signed a new contract. He's packed in with England since Allardyce. Well, it was Allardyce, wasn't it, when he decided to retire from England. And he's playing some of the best football of his career. In the twilight of his career, he's won the Champions League with Liverpool, who remains a key cog in their wheel. So they are 2 examples of players who are benefiting from playing less football.
I'm not sure there will be a Carabao Cup, not as we know it. I think people should be genuinely fearful of these conversations that keep recurring, because there's no doubt that some of the big 6 clubs are, I mean, they're up for change, whether it's partly because they fear missing out, they're aware of, other forces, whether it's, Bayern Munich's and Real Madrid's who are pushing plans, and, I think, it's great that at least a manager like Klopp speaks out against it, because it's going to take a lot of resistance, I think. I mean, I think, the direction of travel on all these arguments is that the top clubs are getting more and more agitated about, you know, trying to get more competition among themselves, obviously more money among themselves, and you know, it's going to take a lot of resisting.
Would you take another Champions League game this week, Melissa? Say on Tuesday night, Liverpool, Napoli, for example.
No.
Or a Carabao Cup quarter-final. Carabao Cup
Honestly,
quarter-final against Aston Villa. So you'd rather see Liverpool play Villa in the quarter-final of the Carabao Cup at Anfield on Tuesday night than a Champions League fixture?
You'd rather have a Champions League fixture, but the issue is it's not a or, it's a and there will be another, and there will be another, and that's the issue. Liverpool are already in a situation where they're flying out for the Club World Cup, having to field second team, send some players, you know, fly some players later, and it's all this added stress and demands when they've already got enough on their plate, and the expectation and the pressure of having to end this title drought is already, I think, quite a sizable thing that they're dealing with. So you can understand why there is such an annoyance from Jurgen. And I think one of the key issues for him was that the story he read said all the big clubs are in agreement that they want these extra games. And he's like, whoa. I definitely don't want it. No one's asked me. And I think if you go through, Guardiola's complained about the games, Pochettino, when he was here, complained about the games, the players themselves complain about it. And, you know, we often sit back and criticise our not performing to optimum. He's on a 6-game run without goals, or we don't actually take into the full picture and realise that they're not robots.
Well, on that point, you were at Anfield yesterday to watch Liverpool. 2 excellent goals from Salah. We wouldn't deny that. But if there was a performance that looked tired, okay, there might have been a bit of anxiety. You'll be able to tell us because you're inside the stadium. But that was a performance. That was about getting. That felt, watching on television, that was about getting the job done, and then it's on to the next fixture, which for the first team players is of course on Wednesday.
Yeah, they were very tired, well below their own standards that they've set for themselves. So many mistakes. When you see Virgil van Dijk making errors that you not expect to happen in Sunday League, you know, it's going to be a difficult afternoon. They've gone to Bournemouth and played. They've obviously then gone to Salzburg. Really intensive game. That first half was rapid, and it looked like they've just been completely taxed out. But they get the job done. Watford, by the way, were excellent, really good at denying any space, but also aggressive when they had possession, created a lot of good chances, and I've never seen non-finishing like that in a while. But they're managing to just get the job done. But this is, I think, where the conversation comes in about having to do so much and too much. Can you imagine if another game was fitted into this week? I cannot see how anyone thinks a situation like this can be plausible.
Okay. We think that, Jurgen Klopp, of course, he's had his say this morning in the papers, Jeremy. He is a hugely influential figure now in English football, and his stature grows. He's just signed a new deal until 2024. What does that say about Liverpool's belief in him, and also his attachment to that club, to Liverpool, and to winning more and more trophies?
Yeah, it's a huge statement. I mean, 10 from Liverpool. I mean, like you said, Klopp is arguably the best manager in the world right now. The run they're on is just remarkable, really. So to tie him up for that length of time is a great achievement by Liverpool. And I mean, I presume they would have started talks after the Champions League win in June in Madrid. And Klopp probably could have named his price, really, but it's interesting because you've got Klopp tying his future to Liverpool, and down the road in Manchester City, their biggest rivals. There's a lot of doubt still about Guardiola. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? So
that's the point I was going to make, Joe, is that sometimes you start building a picture of what life beyond that manager would be like. And that's what's happening with Guardiola at the moment, isn't it? The story this morning, back of the Sun, Ken Lawrence, Brendan Rodgers is the top target to replace him. When nobody's ever talked about Jurgen Klopp's successor. It's never been mentioned, has it?
No. Well, why would Klopp want to go anywhere else?
Because there's nothing wrong.
I think Klopp will probably... will he see out that deal?
But it's nice. I mean, he did, was it 7 years? Was it at Dortmund, around 7 years?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously by the end, but he said he'd run out of some steam, that tricky last season. But I think it's just different managers, you know, I don't know, marshal their resources. You know, Guardiola's we'll get on to, tends to be 3 or 4 years max. Klopp has shown he can do longer. I think it's something about probably managing energy levels, about being settled, about the politics of the place. I think, you know, I mean, Guardiola clearly is king of all these sort of surveys at City, but everything seems to be where Klopp needs it to be. He's got, you know, enough influence over transfers. He trusts the people around him. He likes the city. You know, there's a rapport with the fans. I mean, there's, you know, you go through everything, and and the fact is, and they've got the capability of winning the biggest honours in the game.
He wants to create a legacy like they had in the 70s and 80s. I saw him. He was quoted in one paper yesterday saying, "Winning the Champions League is just the start. It's not the end. You know, we want to win more and more." And that must be music to the ears of Liverpool fans. You put
Liverpool win this title. I mean, you know, he's a legend, isn't he? I mean, it's huge. It's big. I think I mean, obviously they've got this amazing European heritage, but to be the guy who puts Liverpool back on the domestic perch.
At this rate as well, we've never seen like runs like these and points total like these before. And Manchester City have set the benchmark. And I think Leicester found yesterday, with the standards as they are, how debilitating a draw can feel. And it shouldn't actually be that way, where you've drawn and you thought, that's it, it's over. But that's the reality we're living in because of what City did in the previous 2 seasons, and Liverpool have continued that. I think with Jurgen, the reason he is able to do those longer spells is because he actually can switch off. He loves going away for a holiday and not thinking about football, or it's not all consuming for him. He's not obsessive about the job. He's got good balance, and it's great news for Liverpool because it's not just about what they've been able to do on the pitch since he's here. The owners have managed to do the main stand. There's obviously a new training base that's being built. There's the Anfield Road and proposals. So because they've got a man who... The clubs had this one vision policy, but they've not had the person to completely, you know, implement that and bring that to life and have confidence around all departments of the club, and he does that. So they've managed to do a lot of things where you'll feel the impact and influence of it long after he's gone. Yeah.
The immediate impact, or in January, is of course the new striker Takumi Minamino. Just tell us a little bit about him, because this is what £7.5 million, a release clause that they've triggered for around £7.5 million to sign him from Salzburg. But what do we know about him and what he will bring to this team in the second half of the season?
He's an absolute bargain. That price tag is ridiculous, 7.25 million pounds. He's a Japan international. Anyone who watched the Champions League games will see he's, you know, plays between the lines, excellent vision, incredible work rate, very technically gifted. I spent a lot of time at Salzburg interviewing their hierarchy. The sporting director was saying his attitude is exemplary. He's been there for 5 years, and you know, there's a lot of talk about Haaland and all their other sort of players, but at Salzburg he's considered their real star, their gem, and their success over the last few years, they say it's been hinged on him. A lot of other clubs have watched him, but because of Liverpool's good relationship with Salzburg, the training base that I've spoken about, it was inspired by Salzburg's academy, and that relationship has allowed them to get ahead of the pack, and he'll join in January.
Yeah. Why is it just... I'm intrigued by the release clause. Why is it so low for someone that's valued so highly?
So Salzburg, actually all of their release clauses contrasted to the talent is quite low. And one of the things their sporting director said to me is, we get players in quite young and we want to develop them. And yes, it is a business because they know that the big clubs will come and they'll sell them for a profit. But we don't want to stand in their way because this is mutually beneficial. We want to show the world we are very good at producing talent, but we don't want to stop you from the next step in your career. So I think if they're now inserting £80 million clauses or whatever, it's doing the players a disservice. And players are going to stop wanting to come because they're going to think, okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to develop, and then I can't take the next step. So I think it works quite well at the moment.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Big signing for Liverpool in the January window. He's on his way. Okay, next up we're going to talk Manchester United. They play Everton this afternoon. The 4,000th consecutive game that Manchester United will name one of their academy products in the matchday squad. That's coming next. I don't want to be uncharitable. I didn't know you had a heart, Jeremy, but we've just been talking about Manchester United, haven't we? And the like, let's say, in all probability, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will name in his matchday squad this afternoon for the game against Everton a player, at least one player, who's graduated from the youth team setup. We can say that's a near certainty. If he does, it'll be the 4,000th successive first-team fixture that Manchester United have named an academy prospect stroke graduate in their squad. How significant is a statistic like that?
Well, I would be interested to know who the nearest...
Everton, 1,000 games.
There you go.
Correct.
It's only 3,000 behind then. So when you look at it in that context, it is an amazing statistic, and it's good PR for United in these difficult times. They've been bigging it up all week, and good for them. But, looking ahead, is that going to make them champions of England again? No. I mean, Rashford, Greenwood, great players, but they will still continue to buy the big names in a bid to get back to the top. So yeah, it's nostalgic, and it is testament to their DNA and their attitude towards an academy that has provided some fantastic players down the years.
If we want to, because we're in a good mood this morning, or if we're not, let's put us in a good mood. Who are the, in our lifetime that we've watched, favourite or best player to come out of that Manchester United academy?
Well, I mean, obviously, I've watched a lot of time around the class of '92, and obviously Giggs, exactly.
He's got to say Gary, hasn't he?
Giggs was obviously, associated with that time, and he's probably the regarded as the modern probably symbol of what that academy can produce. I mean, I think it's interesting. I was reading an article about it this week, and their periods of it have been deliberate and very conscious. We must concentrate on youth. Some bits of it weren't. I mean, that was, I think, sort of, during the Ron Atkinson period, for example, it was, if the fact that run kept going was almost sort of accidental. Or, no one was sitting there thinking, this club is built on youth at that point. Obviously, Ferguson came in and did make it a cornerstone of the club, and saying that a very admirable cornerstone of the club. I mean, it makes sense in so many ways, doesn't it? You produce your own players, they're cheaper. You produce your own players, you can mould them. You produce your own players, they have a relationship with the club. I mean, there's so many reasons to do it.
Now,
is the way they built that academy under Sir Alex Ferguson, is it unthinkable today? Because I go back to the story of Sir Alex in his first sort of few weeks at Manchester United. I can't remember who would have been youth team manager at the time or who he brought in. But they organised trials in Manchester, and pretty much anyone could turn up. If you had a pair of boots, turn up, we'll put a bib on. If you're good enough, you're into the Manchester United system, and if you're not, you go down the road to Man City. Only joking. But that was pretty much what he did. Could we see that today? Could a manager say, OK, we're going to hold these trials in Cheshire and say, OK, the best ones are in?
No, the game's progressed so much since then, and the academy system is so sophisticated now. And I have to say, it's incredible, this statistic for United. It's a really good thing, because it not only shows that there is faith and an interest in the academy, but it's so important for those young players to know that there is a pathway, that there is this chance to be named in the United squad and feature. And even if they aren't the ones to make it, that, you know, they can go somewhere else and do that. But the clubs are paying more and more attention to their academy because of all the things you've mentioned, why it is so beneficial to have young players that you've produced. But also it's a economical element, as in you can make money from it, from selling players. And also, when we look at the world in the next few years, you know, if Brexit comes through and you've got to produce your own players and all that stuff, there is a massive focal point on it, and rightly so, because there are a lot of young talent in this country, as we're seeing with Chelsea, who, when given the opportunity, can produce.
They do produce. Is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer producing now? He's had 2 massive results in the Premier League. Of course, Europa League on Thursday night. But if we go back, let's talk Premier League, because the victory over Manchester City felt significant.
Yeah, and the win over Tottenham too.
Of
so
course,
he basically got the better of Guardiola and Mourinho in the space of 4 days, which to him is a huge fillip. Look, I've seen various things, and you know, at United, you never, in this current climate, you never were more than 2 or 3 defeats away from speculation about your job. I don't believe he's going to get sacked this season. I think Ed Woodward has invested a lot of faith in Solskjaer, and he wants to give him time to do what they've called a cultural reboot. And he's picking a lot of young players. It's ironic we're talking about the academy, because I think United are the youngest average age, 25, just over 25
25.2,
in the Premier League. And he played virtually an entire team of youth players in Kazakhstan the other week. And like we said, that is what the people at Power Brokers at United like to see. So yeah, he's had a great week. It's bought him more time, and it's been to see the sign in January, and no doubt they'll try and nick a couple of signings there to strengthen probably midfield if they can. But look, they're 5th in the table. They're closing in on top 4. I mean, if they finish in the top 4 this season, that'll be a pretty good effort from Solskjaer.
Be a good return. Does he get this man, Erling Haaland? Steve Bates says that Manchester United are in pole position to sign him, 19 years old. Of course, done so well in the Champions League with Red Bull Salzburg. Would he make a difference? Is he good enough for Manchester United?
Well, I can see him. He's exactly, as Jeremy says, he's the sort of profile of player they're trying to go for now. They're talking about this youthful reboot. I mean, first question, I guess, is, you know, given the choices he's likely to have, whether you go to a club. I mean, the Champions League issue is a huge one, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, if you know, he's got a long career ahead of him, but a player who's wanted by all the top clubs, that's one of the first questions they ask, isn't it? You know, am I going to be playing Champions League football? And obviously United at the moment are still a distance off that. So that's, you know, that's one of the. I imagine that's going to be one of the key factors in his thinking of, you know, how much guarantee do I, you know, getting in the top 4 for United is you know, it's been a while since that was an assumption, and there's still work to be done before it becomes a lot of work to be done before it becomes the norm again at United.
Yeah, but this would be all about bringing in young talent as well, though, Melissa, wouldn't it? Kind of buying into that cultural reboot that Jeremy was talking about, building this next generation, this new young Manchester United team. Is he ready for United? Is this the obvious next move for him?
Having spent time with Salzburg and speaking to...
I teed you up for this. I know I teed you up for this, sorry.
Speaking to a lot of their heads, the head of the academy, the sporting director, the manager, obviously exceptional young player, great attitude, very humble, modest. So all the things when you're looking for a player, does he have talent? Obviously. All the other things that you look for, ticks all those boxes, excellent. He's not played enough professional football at a high level to answer the question, is he ready for a club like United? Because I think when you go to United now, you're not going into this winning machine and stuff. You have to take a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, which at the moment at Salzburg he actually doesn't have. There's not a lot of pressure or focus or any of that. He's been allowed to develop. Okay, he's got a lot of headlines and hype now because of his performances, especially in the Champions League, but he's been allowed to develop pretty quietly. everything I was told was they would like him to stay at least until the end of the season. They'd very much like him to have another season to get that experience. And if he does go, the preference would be for him to go to the Bundesliga, to Leipzig or Dortmund, to continue that development just away from the pressures of the Giants.
Is that Salzburg's preference?
Yeah,
and how influential are they in a decision like that in terms of the momentum of his career and development of his career?
I think they do play a big part because obviously they've taken care of him, they've looked after him, they do have his best interests at heart. They're not thinking about, commercially what's it going to do for them, which club he's linked to or whatever. They're thinking about his career trajectory. And if you see their history, with the likes of Sadio Mane, Naby Keita, the other players that they've brought through, how they've cared even when those players have kicked on and carried on and gone somewhere else, that they keep checking in and making sure that everything's okay. They are really big on development. The thing I would say is, though, United already have, Greenwood. They've got so many exciting talents of their own as well. So I don't think it would be a massive issue if they missed out on someone like him. I think there's other areas like the midfield that they really need to strengthen. And the other thing they need to think of as well is, I was at the Manchester derby and they were absolutely stunning on the counter. As we all know, that is their strength. United have to think about building a multifaceted team, because you're only going to get a chance to play on the counter and be given that freedom only a few times in the season against teams who also want to play. The rest, the obstructive ones, the ones you need to break down, you need to build a team capable of doing that. And that is a process. And I think actually starting to play on the counter is good because you pick up all the ideals, the pressing, and everything that you want a United team to have. But they really need to think about building a multi-dimensional squad.
Haaland's agent's Mino Raiola as well, so that'll probably come into the equation when it comes to finding a new club.
Yeah, I'm sure
they can join the discussion when they talk about Pogba's future as well.
Yeah,
so.
Well, that's right.
That will be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to talk about the man currently in the job at Goodison Park as well, because Manchester United play Everton this afternoon at Old Trafford. The game, of course, is live on Sky. Duncan Ferguson has the interim role. Sensational result last weekend against Chelsea, Matt, at Stamford Bridge. That's undeniable. Where do Everton go from here? Carlo Ancelotti, of course, out of work, having left Napoli, heavily linked with the job. Vitor Pereira last week, of course, too, and has spoken about the reasons why he's staying in China. But what's the sensible move for Everton?
I mean,
obviously, whatever the sensible thing is, they won't do. But
well, I was going to say, I mean, Mashiri's not really having a great run of it, is he?
No.
I did a piece on him. This was going back a while and questioning a lot of calls then that were being made in the transfer market, which seemed incredibly erratic. Just how there just didn't seem to have been any kind of strategic thought at all. And they're appointing a pretty big juncture in things when you consider the money that's been thrown around. And yeah, do I trust him to make the right call? I'm really not sure I do. Where do they go? Ancelotti would be a huge profile. I mean, he's a great figure of football, isn't he? But is he a profile of someone? I would be looking at someone who's going to try and build a club for the next 5 years, actually make sense of the place, actually squeeze the maximum out of the resources they have. I would be looking more for a profile of an Eddie Howe but someone who I think is a hard-working club builder, team builder for the next 4 or 5 years. And I'm not sure Ancelotti will be coming to Everton thinking, I'm going to spend 4 or 5 years here.
Ancelotti's never been the man to go and this is our identity, this is what we're doing. He always goes into established clubs that pretty much everything's already decided. I think Everton need, as Matt said, somebody that goes there and it's undeniable who they are, what they're about. And it's a process of building over a long time that everybody buys into. And for me, if you're appointing Ancelotti, it's because of name and pedigree, not because it tallies with what you actually need at this moment in time. That's not. Sometimes when you say that, people are like, how dare you say he's a bad manager? And that's not the point. Is he the manager you require right now? For me, no. Eddie Howe is, that profile of person, but from what I understand from Eddie, he's very happy at Bournemouth because he's been given the opportunity to build them properly, hardly any interference, and he had that spell where he went to Burnley. He doesn't want to move away from the south, so even though he was an Evertonian growing up, I don't think he'd consider that role. And then you look outwardly and you think maybe somebody like Ralph Rangnick, who again, he's development ability and the people he's influenced. So if anyone was open, would Everton go and look at somebody like Thomas Tuchel if they could get him? You would think probably yes. Would they want Nagelsmann if they could get him? Probably yes. Also very good manager, development manager, Jurgen Klopp. All these people Rangnick has influenced and he's built a club. Obviously the question is he's never been in England. What would that be like? But some of the most successful managers have never managed in England before.
What about the man in the dugout this afternoon? What about his chances? We've talked about everybody else's.
He was...
Come on, convince us.
The emotion he showed on the touchline when they beat Chelsea was brilliant to watch, I thought. I love to see stuff like that. He gave that ball boy a big kiss and a cuddle, and he was kissing his players when they came off.
Shaking hands with journalists as well, which he wouldn't have done when he was playing.
I think he is more. I mean, I was lucky. I sat down. He doesn't do many interviews, but I somehow managed to get one from him. Must have been a couple of years ago when he was coaching at Everton, and I was really, struck by the diligence, the work ethic. I'm not saying that he is. I think there are.
Matt, when have you ever sat in front of a potential coach saying,
"No,
sometimes I don't turn up. Some days I don't turn up to training. Sometimes I let the lads do what they want to do."
I'm not sure he's, I would be looking at other options, but all I'm saying is that he takes his coaching career very seriously. He's not someone who's just sort of winging it on being big dunk and running up and down the touchline hugging ball boys.
If they win at United today,
who
knows? I mean, we're playing in the Cup in the week. He could get them to a semi-final of the League Cup. If he does that, they've got to give it. They've got to extend it. They've got to give him maybe to the end of the season.
What struck me is pretty much what you said is sometimes just enjoy it. What happened last week against Chelsea was
he's probably thinking this may be my one and only time I'm ever going to manage Everton. He's not, if he's not been kept in the loop. He looked like a man who was just, like you said, he just wanted to revel in it, and it was a great win. And when you watch the team, though, the work ethic was startlingly different to what it had been previous weeks.
Because imagine the alternative if you didn't fancy it with Duncan Ferguson
you don't
in charge.
It was a pumped up Goodison as well. That atmosphere helped so much, and it was pumped up because of him, because it was this
He's that type
refresh.
Of character.
Yeah, good for him. They play Manchester United this afternoon at Old Trafford. Let's see how Duncan Ferguson gets on in his second game in charge, his first away game in charge of Everton. OK, next up, I'm looking forward to this one. We're going to chat about Pep Guardiola. It's coming next. Welcome back. Just a reminder of who's with us this morning. Matt Dickinson. I'm surprised you didn't go for a run around the block during the break, Matt, after your 130-kilometre super marathon a couple of weeks ago. Melissa's still here, of course, and Jeremy Cross. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. We've been talking about this in part one. Klopp's rage. Liverpool off to the Club World Cup, of course, this week. Carabao Cup on Tuesday against Aston Villa. But he's talking about Liverpool suffering in the future if they are made to play more games in the Champions League. We've seen this headline once or twice already this season. Mo Salah, a couple of terrific goals yesterday in Liverpool's 2-0 victory over Watford. They're 17 clear of Manchester City. City, of course, play Arsenal later today. 25 clear of Manchester United, who play Everton at Old Trafford. Manchester United in the news today. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer saying his players will pull their weight under him, unlike before. I think we know who he's getting at. They're going to make some signings possibly in January. Erling Haaland on his way to United, according to Steve Bates on the back of his paper this morning in The People. We'll get on to this subject now as well. Sam Wallace having the conversation about Guardiola's future and what he needs to do to refresh things at Manchester City, which Sam suggests is about getting rid of some of the old guard, a few players in their late 20s, early 30s at Manchester City, in similar vein to Sir Alex Ferguson, who sold the likes of Paul Ince and Steve Bruce. But I'm fascinated by this story as well. Back of the Sun, Ken Lawrence this morning. He says here, big story this, I think, particularly after the stories earlier in the week. Rodgers tops Manchester City's wish list if Pep Guardiola, or when Pep Guardiola leaves the Etihad. Now, we saw in the week stories in the Mail, Mike Keegan's story, Matt Lawton's story in the Times, very, very similar, on the same day, saying that Pep Guardiola had a release clause in his contract at Manchester City, which would pretty much allow him to walk away at the end of the season free of tie if he wished. Guardiola denied that in his press conference ahead of the game against Arsenal. Why did he deny it? Do we think the existence of the clause is accurate?
Well, it's an odd one, really, because the story, City were aware of the story going to press, and they didn't try and stop the story. So I've covered City a long time, as we all have, and that would indicate to me that it's probably right. But Guardiola has flatly denied it twice now. He denied it in his press conference on Friday, and then.
But why would you? Why wouldn't you say, yeah, okay,
so
well, there's a clause?
Someone's not telling the truth, are they really? But the general
I think
feeling.
he doesn't want the debate around it. He doesn't want to have to talk about it for the next 6 months, particularly in the season. Obviously, when they've slumped. I mean, I've absolutely no reason to. I think Matt and Mike Keegan had it very well sourced, as far as I know. Not only had it sourced, but had.
Well, when you
they went to press,
right?
knowing that they were on safe ground, and I think Guardiola is just trying to. Just thinking that, on top of everything else, I need this like a hole in the head, this sort of debate. But I'm afraid it's not going to go away because he's in the fourth year. As we know, he did 4 years at Barcelona and then said, my head's gone, I need a break, even though he was running one of the greatest teams of all time with the greatest player of all time. He just said, everyone thought he was, how can you tire of Barcelona? He did. He went to Bayern Munich, had a break, went to Bayern Munich, did 3 years there. Again, said, I want to, take a bit of time out, and he's approaching the end of the fourth year, and it's a huge question for him. Has he got the energy to keep going? A lot of people, people at City have been saying ever since day one, wow, the intensity of this man has to be seen to be believed behind the scenes. We see it on the sidelines, but you imagine working with that 24/7 around the place. He's as we're saying about Klopp, and Klopp's just a different being, different sort of energy levels, and of how he can marshal it. And Guardiola just seems less than anyone to have this off switch. He's this sort of crazed perfectionist who.
When you see him late.
So why wouldn't you say? Let's assume because Mike Keegan and Matt Lawton, excellent journalists, and. We don't believe they're wrong. No, I don't think any of us believe they're wrong on the table. Okay, so let's say that first of all. Why can't Guardiola say something along the lines of, well, there is a clause, as there is a clause in most contracts, and it's to protect both parties. Who knows what will happen at the end of the season?
Said, I think
this stops Manchester City having to pay him off if he was to leave. That doesn't have to
for the next 6 months,
he
would get asked about. He would get asked about it every week, every press conference. City would be then asked about who is going to replace him. It would just be the speculation would be incessant.
It's already started. It doesn't matter.
I get that.
It's still on its way.
And the fact is that you look at
it.
his record, and you have to say that people are starting to lean towards him leaving City at the end of this season. You can say I'm not going to all he wants, but he might not have genuinely made a decision yet. But like Matt said, he invests so much emotional energy into a job. I mean, he burnt himself out at Barcelona, didn't he? He had to go to New York for 12 months to sort of gather his thoughts. But
sometimes messages are not just for the media as well. It might be for his players, to his players. No, relax, I'm still going to be here. To supporters as well, to calm them down. Sometimes it's to do with investment and stuff. You don't want people thinking, oh, what? Guardiola's got the opportunity to walk away.
And it's shocking to reveal, but managers don't always tell us the full truth. It's bombshell.
He also knows.
But yeah, we are operating.
Oh, here we go. No, you've got a story.
Are you going to tell us that it's not real as well?
No, but we're operating an environment. Yes, journalists, oddly enough, make mistakes, and not everything that we write turns out to happen as we think it might. But
Speak for yourself.
but we're also operating in an environment where there is so much dissemination. It happens on a daily basis in our lives.
We were once in America covering a United tour, and they'd signed Van Persie, and Fergie did a press conference. I can't remember where, it might have been in Chicago, and they'd announced it on the website literally 10 minutes before he came into this press conference, and we asked him about it, and he denied they signed him. He didn't know they'd put the story on the website.
Yeah.
He just said,
exactly.
no, don't know what you're talking about, lads.
I'd say Fergie, yeah. I mean, it was pretty much a sort of, that was the weekly thing of the press conference, trying to work out which bits of what he said were accurate and which
Pep
bits
also
were...
knows that he has a team that's starting to look a bit tired. It might sound daft to say that because it costs so much to build, and like Melissa said earlier, they set the standards amazingly over the last 2 years. But you look at it, I mean, David Silva's leaving at the end of this season. Aguero's probably going to leave.
Or end of the season.
Yeah, maybe. I think he wants to go back to Argentina and have maybe a couple of seasons there. So he'll be a difficult player to replace. Company obviously left in the summer. Fernandinho's 34, so he's a key player for them. He'll be a difficult player to replace. So it needs regenerating, that team, and like Matt said, does he have the energy to build another side?
Well, and does he have trust in the younger player? I mean, Foden, I think, I saw a statistic this morning, he's played less of a Premier League season than he had at this time last year, which is an extraordinary, especially when you obviously see the form that he can bring to it. I mean, he's trying to justify his place in one of the top teams out there, but he looks capable of it, and that's... It does not appear that Pep is rushing to embrace a sort of self-built generation that... Yeah, they clearly. I mean, Man City put as much into youth resource in the last.
They're no Man United, are they?
5 years. But they've put massive resources into trying to attract the best kids, trying to bring them through. It's not been embraced as part of the Guardiola culture. Has
I mean,
it?
the Foden thing's interesting because I think he's got a big decision to make in the summer. Foden, whether do I stay, do I go somewhere else? I mean, if he'd have been at any other club, he'd have probably been in England squads now. Southgate's basically ignored him because he's not playing enough.
He did say after was it Bulgaria? He did say he could
His
be the
name
flyer,
wasn't
couldn't he?
mentioned
That he
for
could.
the Euros, but he's just not going to play enough games for City between now and next summer to sneak into the squad. And when you look at the current theme of England under Southgate, so he's obsessed with young players like Foden, and he must be so frustrated, Southgate, that he can't pick him. He can't justify picking him.
In terms of the uncertainty around Pep Guardiola, Brendan Rodgers' name here, topping City's wish list. Is he the man they would turn to if or when Pep leaves?
I can't see it. I think Brendan's an excellent manager, but I think City are so infused in the way they're going. I think they want Mikel Arteta to succeed Guardiola because that's the lineage that's been laid there. Part of me thought, is the story sort of to say to Arteta, listen, don't rush, don't go and take any other job, your time is coming. But yeah, City there will be loads of elite managers wanting that position because the structure, they're so well run, they're well built, as you said, exceptional academy. So everything there is built for somebody to go and succeed. With Guardiola, I think, do you know how difficult it must be? He set such an incredible standard. Like, honestly, he's changed what is not even exceptional in English football, but what is good. If 97 points is not enough to win a league title, it's because of him and his team.
He's pointed out in the papers today, hasn't he? He's pretty much said, I'm responsible for Liverpool's success.
Yeah, it is it must be so draining and so tiring. So you can understand why him and the players have faded somewhat. It's natural, it's human. Does he have the energy for the rebuild? Who knows? But I think what he's offered to City, in terms of years may not be stratospheric, but in terms of the game and how he's redefined the standards, it's been remarkable.
The elephant in the room, obviously, is the Champions League. Ultimately, he was brought in to win the Champions League, and he's not made it past the quarterfinals in 3 seasons. So,
this might be the season they can actually focus on it. And
if he won the Champions League, then he could ride away and say, "Job done." If he doesn't win, I don't think City are good enough to win the Champions League. They're just not clicking out of this season to win the Champions League. But
Pochettino's an interesting one as well, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, he would be on a very short list if I was City. Absolutely.
And he's free.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure free. Daniel Levy
but he will be available.
Exactly.
He'll be available
by next summer.
At the end of the season.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to talk Arsenal. Of course, they're searching for a new manager as well. But going into this game, I mean, they're going to have a lot of questions this afternoon. I hope Freddie Ljungberg is able to answer some of them because it's not going to be easy. And just a recap, which is Mesut Ozil's social media post about Muslims being detained in China, Matt, which the club have decided to release a statement, an apolitical statement, to say that they don't get involved and they distance themselves from Ozil's social media post. This morning, we're told that Chinese state television have taken the Arsenal game off air this afternoon. What does this say about the business of sport and politics mixing?
It says that commercial interests are paramount to a club, more than sort of doing the right thing. I think
does that disturb you?
I think it does. Yeah, I think it's I'll probably should be embarrassed to admit I didn't know anything about this particular, or very little about this particular issue of persecution. Congratulations to Mesut Ozil for bringing it to my attention, and I'm sure to many others. I actually found myself reading up about it, trying to educate myself a bit about it. I thought, well, that's using a player's profile for a worthy cause. So for Arsenal, to say to sort of rush to distance themselves from a player like this felt to me shabby. For them to then, as I say, clearly putting their sort of Chinese commercial sponsorship broadcast issues first felt doubly shabby. As many people have pointed out, Hector Bellerin was merrily tweeting about the general election, being nakedly political. Arsenal weren't making statements about that. So I think
you could see that the Arsenal, as soon as they saw it sent them into a blind panic, didn't it?
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
But they should be stronger than that. They should be sticking up for Ozil, and he's their highest paid player.
I mean,
if you have commercial interests in China and they're flexing it, and if they flex their muscles behind the scenes, and we don't know if they have or they haven't.
And they probably saw what happened with the basketball
something
team.
has triggered Arsenal to say,
there was an NBA club, wasn't there? That
Houston Rockets.
Houston Rockets, yeah, they tweeted about the issue in Hong Kong, and
if in doubt, ask Melissa because she's that twice now.
Their Chinese sponsorship was withdrawn.
Yeah.
So, income streams in the Far East, that's the key to it.
Yeah, it's pathetic from Arsenal. It's done for commercial to save themselves from having deals pulled, and like we've seen with the NBA and Houston Rockets. And there are people, I think it's over 1 million people, Muslim people, being detained in China, and to say you're not getting involved, but you are actually getting involved by putting out the statement. As you've already said, they didn't do anything when Bellerin tweeted about the election. The other thing as well is Bellerin, I think it was last year, gave an interview where he said, football is disgusting because it wants you just play and keep quiet. And he says, no, we've got these platforms, we can help change the world, we can help spread positive messages, we can help people.
Be powers for good.
Yeah. Why aren't we using our voice? We can create so much good by speaking up. And I love Bellerin because I think he stands for so much that is good and right in the world. And I love that he does use his platform to try and enforce change. And the same with Mesut Ozil. Like me, I didn't know anything about it either, and he's brought it to my attention, and now I think, wow, like how can that at such a massive scale be happening and for people to not know about it? And he should be credited for speaking up, because it's not an easy thing to do, by the way, because you will get ostracised, and now he's made to feel ostracised by his own club.
Well,
How difficult, Matt, are these issues to write and talk about? Because my instinct in a situation like this should be the next stop now is to fly to China and find out what Mesut Ozil is really talking about. We have, as you said, when Ozil, it's a social media post, sorry, but when Ozil spoke about it, it's just a glimpse, isn't it? It's a snapshot of something we don't really understand or we're not aware of. And I don't think there's any criticism of somebody for not being aware of it. Why would you be? But my instinct is, okay, what is he really getting at? What is the story here?
Absolutely. I mean, whether that's for the sports pages or the foreign pages, political pages, but yeah, I think it's doing a service. I mean, it is, sportsmen also do fall in behind commercial interests. I mean, the fact is the Qatar World Cup, which there's a countless human rights issues, worker rights issues we discussed about. I'm not sure we've seen a single football figure. We've seen plenty who act as well-paid Qatar ambassadors. I'm not sure we've seen any senior football figures say, I've got a problem with this.
Did Joshua say anything bad about Saudi Arabia?
Well, exactly. I mean, there are, within sport, generally, the trend is that you fall in with commercial interests. You decide, I'll keep my head down, don't want to upset the bosses, or it's part of my, ultimately part of my income stream. So, Mesut Ozil has sort of, stuck his neck out there, but the last thing he needs is for his own club to chop him off at it,
Yeah. Difficult day ahead for him, for Arsenal, for Freddie Ljungberg. We'll have to talk about it a little bit later. Ljungberg, the interim Arsenal manager, are we any close to identifying a successor for Unai Emery?
Well, they've ruled out Ancelotti, which is a good thing, because as we were talking before, he's not a person to go in and build and orchestrate an overhaul, which is what Arsenal need. Arsenal need to have their own identity post-Wenger. Arteta is obviously the one that's been spoken about quite a lot. Guardiola said he wouldn't stand in his way if he did want to go and leave and take over a managerial position. He's had experience of an absolute juggernaut and how they operate and how they keep standards up on the pitch behind the scenes. So he'll have a good understanding of those kind of elements, obviously a good understanding of Arsenal. So I think he'd be a good choice. The difficulty Arsenal have is making the wrong decision can set them back so many more years, and they're already lagging. So it is such an important appointment, and I think they're right to take their time and to go through it properly.
Well, the Rodgers one I find interesting. The timing just worked out.
Yeah.
Has worked out sort of wrongly for them. You could argue whether wrongly for him, but I mean, at the end of life, when they were looking and Emery got appointed, Rodgers.
It's the first name I never understood.
Yeah,
That would have been, and now obviously with Leicester, and they've obviously thrown money at him to stay, and he's absolutely flying. But
But if they went in for Rodgers in the summer, would they get him? I mean, it'd be a difficult job for Rodgers to turn down, wouldn't it?
that's what I think. I
The
find
suggestion here,
Leicester's
sorry.
such a good job at the moment,
Yeah.
though. Leicester have everything:
It is,
a new
but
training base, excellent group of players, great scouting system. They're allowing him to enact his vision there. So everything you'd want as a manager, he has at Leicester. Owners who are very interested in advancing the club, all those things. Arsenal is obviously the status of managing one of the powerhouses, but beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to draw your attention, actually, guys, just to finish off here. Jonathan Wilson's piece, his column this morning in the Observer, actually talks about Arsenal losing their status as one of the top teams. In fact, the last paragraph says pretty much that the latest Deloitte report still ranks Arsenal as the fifth biggest Premier League team in terms of revenue for 2017-18 season, but without Champions League football, the trends is downward. Arsenal may just about be a Big Six club, but even the notion of a Big Six is beginning to feel redundant.
Well, they're a club that
That's a brave thing to say about Arsenal because of all their facilities.
Well, they have massive history, massive tradition, but they've not won a lot, have they, lately? I mean, what have they won in the last 10 years? A few FA Cups.
I thought you might say that.
They're in decline under Wenger. way before Wenger left. And, you know, you keep a manager too long, it causes problems down the line. I mean, United are still suffering from the post-Fergie era, really. I mean, they've gone to the 4th manager now in, what, 6 years. So, yeah, look, Arsenal, how long can you survive on past glories and still claim to be a top club?
Yeah, not for very long in the modern world, I would suggest. Which takes us nicely on to Chelsea. 4 defeats in 5 for them. What's going on at Stamford Bridge? We'll tell you next. You're watching Sunday Supplement, as ever. Following us will be Goals on Sunday. Let's find out what Jackie Oatley and Cammy are up to this morning. Cammy.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We've got a fabulous show coming up. But Jackie Oatley, welcome to Goals on Sunday.
Absolutely brilliant to be here. Loving it.
It's great having you on board. We've got so much to go through today. Liverpool march on, but Watford have a real go under Nigel Pearson for the very first time, and Norwich produced their best away performance of the season, but only get a point.
They do indeed. We've got loads to talk about with Darren Bent, former England striker, and we follow you at 11:30. See you then.
I look forward to listening to Darren Bent in a few moments' time. But first up, we're going to talk Chelsea. 4 defeats in 5 now for them, Melissa. Frank Lampard, interesting press conference yesterday after the game, after their defeat against Bournemouth, which not many people would have seen coming after their 3-0 defeat against Liverpool the previous weekend. But Frank, pretty disappointed with the way that his players approached that game at Stamford Bridge yesterday afternoon. And also, he was asked about the atmosphere and said admitted it was flat, but also said, I understand why it was flat. We're not playing the kind of football that he wants to see at Chelsea. What's gone wrong there?
They weren't intense enough. They didn't use the ball well at all. No real speed and purpose to their game. But, you know, the last 2 league sides they've played have been desperate to win. That's obviously not helped. Chelsea required a massive performance, had to be really aggressive in and out of possession, delivered that. And then Bournemouth, exactly the same. We're on a horror run, so many injuries, needed to arrest the slide. Otherwise they were facing, the prospect of being dragged into a relegation scrap. So the fact that they've played those 2 teams haven't helped. I think they're also showing a bit of tiredness, obviously at the top end of the pitch. They're relying on young players who, it's a lot to ask young players to shoulder responsibility in general, but to do it every 3 or 4 days because of the amount of games, which feeds into what we spoke about in the top of the show again, is quite difficult. I thought it was interesting that he said he wasn't surprised, and it's true, because even when they were on that very good run, he said, we're not all together there yet. There's still a lot of weaknesses in our game that we need to work on, and now they're being highlighted. It is a transitional season, so even when things were going well, I think he was right to not get overly carried away. I think these issues are normal. It's not a crisis.
If this was Maurizio Sarri, as it was at times last season, it would be a very different story. So why is it different? Is it because Frank is
because it's Frank
loved?
Lampard, and he's a legend of the club. I mean, he's obviously putting that legendary status at risk now by becoming the manager. But
he knows
it's going to be interesting to see how much time he gets. I mean, if they do go through a really bad spell, because we all know Abramovich doesn't suffer fools, does he? But you'd like to think that Lampard would be the exception to the rule, because he's clearly a bright guy and he's going to become a very good manager. But the strange thing with Chelsea is they're better away from home this season. They're better against sides that open up and give them space to exploit, whereas like a Bournemouth that come to Stamford Bridge and sit behind the ball, he's not got a side that's worked out how to break those teams down yet.
But also does this run just coincide with, I mean, they put a lot of resource, a lot of energy, a lot of adrenaline into that Champions League campaign, going to the wire as well, and that's, I think that's, he's having to, I mean, we have to remember Frank Lampard, had a bit of time at Derby, but never had to juggle that type of campaign where you're juggling the European campaign in the Premier League. I think, he is learning on the job. You should, there's whether he should be doing that as a club as big as Chelsea.
Okay, that's fine, Matt. But when we write, do we write with that in mind?
Well, I think you have to give some slack to that, whether, as you say, whether Roman Abramovich, how much he does. But I think you have to do it in the context of, are you seeing good signs? Are you seeing a team that's trying to get somewhere? Are you, I mean, there are clear issues there. I mean, the fact is, Tammy Abraham's carrying a lot of responsibility. They need definitely another striker. Time to get Giroud out. Trying to bring someone. Yeah, there are clear bits about the squad that you can see are improvement, and obviously now they've got the chance to do that. I think, but you're looking for. Do you see a direction here of a team that is trying to play a certain way? But, someone like Jorginho, I think, has been, just seeing the improvement of him. Kovacic from one year to the other is enough to say, look, these look like players who are being well coached. They understand what is expected of them. They are clearly hit a bit of a sort of flat period domestically, but I see pretty healthy signs from a Frank Lampard Chelsea.
Does it surprise you though, Minister? It's the home form that concerns me, because Lampard as a player was part of the incredible run that Mourinho had, the undefeated record at home. Nobody beats us at home. That was the attitude. Come what may, you will not win at Stamford Bridge. They're almost impregnable until, I think it was it Barini for Sunderland broke that run. I think it was Fabio Barini, wasn't it? Eventually. But they're not impregnable at Stamford Bridge anymore.
No, but that was a defensively solid, compact, really well-organised, well-oiled team, a very expensively assembled team and all that stuff, lots of experience. These are completely different circumstances. Their strengths lie in their attacking football, their progressive play. At home, when teams are coming to sit back, to defend deep, we're talking about United earlier, that development of being multi-dimensional, they're also still learning the different ways of breaking a side down, and that's a work in progress. I think often enough we just want everything to happen like that in football, and that's unrealistic. Liverpool, not so long ago, couldn't break teams down. That was the massive mark and cross against them, and they go and buy different players, spend a lot of time on their set piece work, and they find ways to go and cure that issue. But again, that comes with time, that comes with the team developing together and all this stuff. Like Matt says, I'd be concerned if there wasn't positive signs at Chelsea and you couldn't work out what they were doing and you were sort of scratching your head as to what Lampard's about and what that team's about. You're not doing any of that. You can see everything they want to do, and you think with time, with developing together, with a refreshing of that squad, remember, no Hazard, who carried them for so long and all that stuff, then you see that they are going well. Yeah, they are going well. And massive results, we should say as well, for Eddie Howe yesterday. He needed that big win for Bournemouth at Chelsea. Yes. OK, next up, we're going to talk a little bit about Leicester. They drew yesterday, and also Tottenham. They're in action this afternoon too. I've no idea where the time went this morning. All I know is we haven't got much of it. But let's have a quick chat about Leicester, because we thought they might be the pretenders to the Liverpool crown, or they could stop Liverpool. They could find a way to stop Liverpool, but they slipped up yesterday. And now we see it, incredibly, it shows the signs of progress. We see it as a bad result. Yeah, that's the margin for error. There is actually no margin for error as it stands at the moment in this race. I don't think Leicester will privately think it's over yet. There's still so much football to be played. So much can still happen. This is the most taxing part of the season, and teams usually, end of December, January can dip. And they'll be looking at Liverpool's schedule, the fact that there's the Club World Cup, the fact that they'd have to catch up a game and all that. And Liverpool's injuries, Lovren, Matip, Fabinho, question mark over Wijnaldum now. And they'll think maybe there's hope. Liverpool, though, having learned from last season that, you can't drop points, I don't think they will drop many. Yeah. A Sunday supplement first.
where two guests aren't going to speak in a part because we have run out of time. Never happened before.
Action-packed.
It has been action-packed. Thanks very much for your time this morning, Matt, Melissa, and Jeremy. See you again very, very soon. OK, stick around. Lots of football coming your way. We'll start at Old Trafford this afternoon. It's Manchester United against Everton, Arsenal against Manchester City from 4. Tomorrow night at the Coliseum, it's Palace against Brighton. Download the Sky Sports app. You can watch in-game goals and highlights on your mobile phone. Oh, Jackie and Cammy, they're finally off their phones. They've got Darren Bent next, Goals on Sunday. OK, thanks. That's all we've got time for. We'll see you next week at 10 o'clock. Bye for now.
Sky Sports Premier League. Feel it all.